Hello there, Victoria. Just waiting for the rest of the group to come on. You've got all your bits and pieces ready. Have a look. Oh, here we have Arlene. Hi.
Hello.
Hi there. How are you doing?
Grandma. Good. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Victoria. Thanks for joining me today.
You turn you up a little bit.
People coming on. Got Joyce coming on. Hi there, Joyce. I see you relaxing today. Arlene, you've got two of you there. That's lovely. Nice to see you. Hi. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah, we're doing all right? We've just got a few more coming on. Fantastic. I do like it when you're keen and early. I hope you've got all your ingredients together and that you've got your scones mixes. You've got all your bowls out and everything. You'll see that I've got quite a lot of preparation already done here for you. And if we can have your videos on, that would be helpful, because then I can help you along as we go through the class. But we'll keep you unmuted. Sorry, we'll keep you muted so that we're not getting too much noise. I've got 3 of you on at the moment. I think I'm looking at another couple. Okay, fantastic. So welcome to my kitchen. So where is everybody from? Does everyone know how to use Zoom? Do you know about the chat box in the bottom? So if you go to the bottom of your Zoom screen, you'll see a mute button, which you probably are muted at the moment. That'll be kind of crossed out. And then as we come along, you'll see a little bubble which says chat underneath. You want to just say hi in the chat box and tell me where you're from. Where are you calling in from today? From Greenwood? That's Joyce. Hi, Joyce. Nice to see you. And Zionsville for Victoria. Fantastic. And Arlene, whereabouts are you at the moment? You're waving at me. Can you type in? Have you found the little chat box? If you click on it, it should come up at the right-hand side. You can't do it. Okay, let me unmute you for a second. I'll ask you to unmute yourself if you can do that. You know how to. Oh, there we go.
So it still says waiting and loading. We keep getting the loading signal still.
Oh, okay.
So we're on her iPad. We don't have the chat box available yet coming up. But
you can hear me and see me?
We can hear you and
we see you and hear you very well.
Okay.
Yep. We might try to switch over to a laptop because I'm not sure why the iPad's having trouble loading the Zoom, all the features for some reason.
Fair enough. That might be just a memory issue on your technology. If you can, that's good. If not, I'll just look out for you. If you're looking a bit concerned or you're waving at me, then I'll unmute you if you have questions. Okay. Does that work? But we'll make this work somehow or other. Okay. I'm just going to mute you for the moment.
So let me.
Okay. Okay, looking good. So I've got Arlene, Joyce, and Victoria. Whereabouts? Okay, Arlene's going to go and find a laptop rather than use her iPad.
So Arlene is my grandma and her mom. So
right, so you're the three young ladies.
Yeah, and they're
Fine,
brilliant.
joined us. Okay, fantastic. Like your cupboards, by the way, similar to mine.
Oh,
But we
we
do
are.
have grey, grey and white. I don't know if you can see
Yeah.
that. Anyways, yeah, that was one of our lockdown projects. Okay, so that's three of our ladies. I think I'm expecting six today. One of our ladies couldn't make it. Now, what we will be doing is we will be recording this, but don't panic. It's a private link, and it only goes out to the people that are actually on the event or have signed up and couldn't make it. So don't be worrying about that. It's mainly so they can see everything that we're doing today. And of course, today we're doing our scones. So we're just at 7 o'clock, so I'm going to give it another couple of minutes just to make sure that everybody else is going to come on that is registered to come on, and then we'll get a start. What I would suggest you do is just pull all your items together that you think you might need. Is everybody using a KitchenAid or some form of mixer, or are we doing by hand? If anybody's doing it by hand, can you just type that in on the chat? And Donna's just joining us as well, so let me just check her in. So is everybody using a mixer tonight? Yes? Everyone's using a mixer? Yeah, okay. Oh, and Arlene's coming in again on her laptop. Okay. Okay, is everything loading up all right? So has everybody used Zoom before? And on the bottom of the screen, in the left-hand corner on the far side, you should see, actually it's that side, isn't it? Because this is reversed. You'll have your mute and unmute, which is a little microphone in the corner. I might ask you to do that if we get stuck at any point, but we're just going to have you all unmuted at the moment. That means we don't get all the noise and clatter and distraction. But in the middle of the screen at the bottom there, you've got a little chat box. If you could just put in there where you are joining us from today, that just helps me to know where you all are, but also it also introduces you to everybody and where you're from. But it also means that I know that you can communicate with me through that chat box. So if you have any questions as we go through, that's where you will put in your questions, and I'll keep an eye for that. And I'll making sure that everybody's, oh, okay. Oh, yes. Oh my gosh. You can't bake along because your oven, oh no, your oven died. That's, oh, Donna, I'm so sorry, but you're going to watch and, okay, that's lovely. So what we'll do is as we go through this, we're going to make sure nobody gets left behind, as far as we're not going to go on to the next step until everybody's at the right step. That way, we just make sure everybody's on the same page, as it were, and we all end up with some yummy scones. These are ones I made earlier today. These are, well, we call them fruit scones in England, and we make them with something we call sultanas, but you might know them as golden raisin scones, and these are my husband's favourites. So we'll go through some variations that you can make as we go along. So Arlene's from Framingham in Michigan. So again, thanks for joining us. I'm glad we've been able to do this virtually. I know we were struggling to get together over lockdown, and now we're doing everything virtually and online. So yesterday was a little bit of a sad day for me, really, because yesterday was the day that I handed back the keys to the tea room. So we are completely virtual now, and working from our home kitchens, the catering that we're doing. So that was a little bit of a sad day, but onwards, and we have to kind of evolve with the times, and we can still share some of our lovely yumminess in this way. So I think I've got everybody now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. My 6th person can't join me today, and my 7th is with Victoria and Donna and that group of 3. So I think that is where we are at the moment. So is everybody ready? I'd want your videos on. Arlene's moving our iPad around, so that's making me feel a little bit nauseous, but that's okay. Joyce is there. Donna's not there at the moment. Okay, so the idea of having your video camera on is so that I can make sure that you're kind of following along with me. Like I say, I'm going to be recording this, but don't panic. If you do need a replay, I'll send you a private link. It's not like it's going up on YouTube for the whole world to see. This is just between the group. And then I have got, well, who was it? Donna was saying she can't bake along tonight. But she's going to watch, and then if she wants the playback, just ask me for it and I can get that out to you, Donna. That won't be a problem. That will be sometime tomorrow. So let's get started. So has everybody got a bake mix or the ingredients? We had one heck of a problem this weekend. We were supposed to have got things sent out on Friday for everybody to get their bake mixes in time. But we had a big issue with United States Postal Service. The website went down and we weren't able to do anything until Monday. So I'm very sorry for those of you that haven't been able to get the bake mixes in time. But we did send out the recipe, but I'm actually going to be using the bake mix. Who is not using a bake mix? Is it just one or two of you? I wasn't sure who that was in the end. Could I just have you, could you just type in the chat that you're using the bake mix? Yeah, write in bake mix if you're using the bake mix, and that way I'll know who's who. That's probably the best one. Oh, you're going, so Joyce is going to watch and bake tomorrow, but you have, oh, you already have your ingredients. Fantastic. Victoria, you've got your bake mix. Joyce got your bake mix. Excellent, excellent. Do you know what your flavour is? I don't know if we gave you a choice, because we've just been moving from the tea room into our home kitchen, so I'm not sure what ingredients we had left. Now, the bake mix I'm using is with black currant. Do you know what your flavour is? It should be, I don't know if you can see that, it should be a little dot, coloured dot, so you've got black currant. I think we only have black currants left, but I might be mistaken. Some of you might be using cranberry or golden raisin. What's the other one we've got on here? Plain. But I'm going to go through how you can change that, because when you open this packet, in fact, let's open the packet now. What you'll find in here will be a little pack of dried fruit, and it will look something like that inside. Now, all your other ingredients are in here, except for your wet ingredients. So we'll come on to that in a second. But you can swap that out. If you'd rather use cranberry, or if you'd rather use golden raisins like I did with mine, I took my black currants out and I just swapped it out with the same weight. It's about an ounce. That's all we're going to be using today. So you can change it up, or you can make them plain. Now the bake mixes do have sugar in already, so they will make a plain sweet scone opposed to a savoury scone, which is a similar recipe but obviously without the sugar. Okay, are we all there? Arlene got a mix today in the mail. Fantastic! Yay, we've got bake mixes. Great. Okay, let's begin. The first thing that we need to do is switch on the oven. And the oven needs to go on at 375 degrees. And another thing you might want to check at as well is where your shelves are in the oven. It's much easier to move your shelves in the oven before it gets hot. I had moved my top shelf down the other day because I was making something in a Dutch oven and it needed more headroom, and I had to move it up. So on my oven, it's the second row down, but I'd still call it towards the top of the oven, and that will help get this nice brown golden colour on your scones. So make sure your shelf is in the right position. We're going to go for towards the top end of the oven, so you get that nice lovely colour, and we're setting it at 375, which I'm going to do now. Okay, that's going to preheat. That's always the first thing that we do. Now, the next thing we're going to do is prepare our pan, and I'm just going to use, now, I'm a little bit embarrassed by this. I bake a lot. It should be silver. It's more of a brown colour. It's just because it's been in the oven a lot. So yeah, I'm just being authentic here. So I'm going to use some cooking spray oil just to spray my my pan. Now my pan has one of these silicon sheets. Like I say, it's a bit dark and brown, but that's just because it's been used a lot. Or you can use wax paper and then spray, just to stop your scones from sticking. I'm just going to set that aside, and then we can get cracking. Now this is one of our most simple recipes. It doesn't take a lot of work, especially if you're using a mixer, and I think everybody is using one tonight. Now this is one of the benefits of not having the tea room location anymore, because this is the first time I've done scones in so long with a KitchenAid. I've been doing it by hand, as Grandma showed me, but when I made these ones earlier, I actually did the first stage in the mixer. Now I'm going to take some of the stuff that I'm making out of the mixer and putting it into a glass bowl, purely so you can see what I'm doing, because that's the only thing. When I use a mixer, you can't see inside it, and I don't have one of those fancy cameras that you can look in. So bear with me on that. So we've taken the dried fruit out, and what's in here, in fact, let me go through the ingredients just so that you know what we actually have in here. So we've got 8 ounces of flour, a single ounce of sugar, and we're just using granulated sugar, and we've got 2 teaspoons of baking powder, and I'm going to talk about baking powder in a minute, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and that's what we have in here. This is our dry ingredients. Now I'm just going to dump that in here, and then to that, that's all mixed in, the sugar's in there, everything is in there. And to that, we're going to add our butter, and it's 2 ounces of butter. Now, the lovely thing about America, and we don't have this in the UK, is that you buy your butter, or you can buy butter in sticks, which just makes it so easy, because 1 stick is 4 ounces, and we just need half of it. So just half a stick of butter, or 2 ounces, going to go into this recipe. Now, what I like to do, she says, trying to look for a knife, is I like to cut up my butter first. The reason we do this is it increases the surface area of the butter. So it, can you see that? All right, it's a little bit bright. My light's a little bit bright. So what I'm doing in here is I've just dumped the mix in there, which has got the flour, the salt, the baking powder, and the sugar. And then into that, I'm just adding my 2 ounces of butter. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is we always use what we call the paddle on our KitchenAid. So we'll make sure that goes on there first. Give that a twist. Yeah, that's nice and secure. Lower that down. We make sure the arm is in place, this little switch at the back. And then we're going to turn this on, but we're just going to do it at the very lowest power. Otherwise you get flour jumping everywhere. So I'm just going to put that on. And we're just going to leave that, and I hope you can still hear me okay. So I want to talk a little bit about baking powder. Have you ever had a scone where you get this really funny aftertaste? It's like, kind of like coats the roof of your mouth, and it's like almost metallic. That's because you're using a baking powder that has aluminum. This one I'm using is aluminum free. Can you see how it has that little red slogan here, aluminum free? That's the kind of baking powder you want to be using, and that's the kind of baking powder that's in the mix. It was the first thing that I learned when I came here, is our baking powder is different. And if you've ever had scones and they've had that funny aftertaste, it's because you've been using regular baking powder that has aluminum metal in there, and it just has that metallic taste. So we're just going to let this do its work, and we're aiming for this to mix. The butter is mixing in with the bake mix till it turns to breadcrumbs consistency. That's what we're looking for. It doesn't actually take that long. I'm going to turn that off so you can hear me a bit better. I'll just lift this and I'll show you what it looks like. Now I am, for your, just so you can see this a little better, is I'm going to put this into a glass bowl. that off. I'm going to put this into a little glass bowl so you can see the consistency of what this looks like. So you don't have to do it for long, but the idea is that all that butter that I've put in has now been mixed in. You see what I'm looking at here? And it's like breadcrumbs, yeah? So it's a little bit heavier than it was just flour, because all that butter has now been mixed in, nice and fine. Now, if you do get any lumps, I've just found one. I think that was just a little bit of butter on. What we can do with our hands is very gently, just with the tips of our fingers, do this. And if you're ever doing it without a mixer, you are just going to very carefully, really, really lightly, just do that through your fingers until all that butter, it's what we call rubbed in. It's called the rubbed in method. Move those guys out of the way so you can see that's all nice and light and mixed. Okay, so the next part of the recipe is all about adding enough liquid to bring the mixture together. Now, if you make it too wet, the dough is going to get really sticky, and when you come to cut out the scones, they are going to spread. So if you've ever made scones and they've spread, it's because they're too wet. Now, alternatively, you don't put enough liquid in there, you're going to make them too dry and then they'll crack. So the idea is that you get it about right. It's a little bit like the Goldilocks effect. You don't want it too wet, you don't want it too dry. So in the recipe, it asks for 3 ounces of milk. But every flour has a different absorbency rating. And I don't know, depending on what flour you have, it'll have a different absorbency rating. Now, 3 ounces should be enough for the flour that we're using. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this gradually, and I'm just going to use my knife, but you can do it in the mixer. But add your 3 ounces first, and then mix it as it comes together. And I say I'm doing this bit by hand just so that you can see. So I'm doing it in the mixer, you can't see inside. And that's just gradually coming together. But you see how this is kind of doughy, but then I've still got some of my dry ingredient around the edge. So I'm just going to keep going round until that starts to come together. Now, this is still quite dry around the edge. Let's see how much more of this. A little bit more of the milk. I don't want to put it all in if I don't have to. And it's gradually going to come together. Now, when we've got rid of a lot more of that dry mix, I'm going to go in with my hands. This is the best way. And again, this is how grandmother showed me. The technique I'm doing with my hand is I'm actually pressing it against the side of the bowl. I'm just doing that with my hand, yeah? Against the side of the bowl. And I'm just bringing that round together. Now, it's still a bit sticky, sticking to my fingers. This is where I think doing it with a mixer, you just don't get the feel for it. And you can end up over mixing this in the mixer. You don't really want to do that. Go back how long to mix the butter in the mixer? Just until it goes to breadcrumbs and all the butter has been mixed in. You don't want to overwork it, otherwise it'll go all gloopy. You want it to be just like fine breadcrumbs. So how long was it? 2 or 3 minutes maybe? It's not a complete science. Depends on the temperature of your butter. There's so many variables. Which is why doing this as a bake along is such a good idea, because you can really get to understand what this should be like. Now, can you see how mine is starting to come together now? And again, if you were doing this in the mixer, it would only take a few minutes. But you want to make sure that it's not sticky and it's not dry, somewhere in between the two. Now, I'm getting the feeling that this is a little bit dry because I've still got some. So I'm just going to add a little bit more of my milk, but I'm just going to add a little bit with my hands, just so it's not too wet. And that's all going to come together, and then I'll be able to turn it out. on my surface. Yeah, that is just enough, just enough. That comes together. Now, if you're using a mixer, you want to make sure that you're turning that off, and you might do the last little bit by pulling it together with your hands. How are we doing? Has everybody got something that looks a little bit like a ball of dough? Yeah? Okay, so everybody at this stage, if I can have a yes. I know it's hard to be covered in baking and type, but if you can do a yes or a thumbs up for me, that would be great.
We're still a little behind. We're still trying to figure out how much milk to add.
Okay, so it's 3 ounces on the recipe. Do you know
it's looking a little dry with only.
Yeah, add a little bit more. But like I say, don't overdo it. So how I did it is I just put my hands in and I just flicked a little in and just dampened it with my hand.
Okay.
Otherwise, yeah, just a little bit. But I say don't want it to go sticky, otherwise you've gone a little bit too far. Okay, now mine is getting close to being sticky, which isn't really what I wanted. But we're going to put it out on a floured surface in a minute. Okay, so that's come together quite nicely in a small ball. Now, depending on what size your cutter is going to be, will depend on how many of these scones you actually get. And then you want to have a look at putting your dried fruit in here. So I can't actually get into my packets too tight. Let me find some scissors. Okay. So like I say, you can put whatever dried fruit you like in here. You can use fresh blueberries, but you have to be really careful how you actually bring those into your recipe. And again, if you were doing this in the mixer, you would just add this in and the mixer would do the work. But I'm just going to do this by hand. Now, I always used to love putting dried fruit into my mix. And I used to think, oh, I'll put more than an ounce. It's only an ounce that we're using in this mixture. We could double the quantity of everything and make it a couple of ounces. But if you put too much fruit to the same quantity of your flour and dried ingredients mix, what you'll find is that all the dried fruit just falls out. So there's no point in doing that. Just put that out of the way. So have we all got a nice ball of yumminess that's got the fruit combined with it? How are we doing? I don't know if you're all here yet. Just let me know where you are. You're almost there. Fantastic.
We need another minute or two just to finish eating and putting cranberry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. We'll just hang on a second. So are we all, have we made scones before? Have we made English scones before? No? No, this is new for some of you? Okay. I'm just going to wipe down my surface. The only thing with baking, it's probably one of the messier things. Just get rid of that. Okay. So, have you all got one of these? Some kind of, you call it a cookie cutter, I call it a pastry cutter. Mine's serrated, it has a serrated edge. And this is about 2 inches in diameter. I think 1.5 inches is about ideal. This is a little bit larger. And in here, I've got a little bit of flour, just a bit of extra flour, which I'm just putting my cutter into to stop it sticking to the dough. Oh, you usually use eggs. Okay. Does this change the recipe? Yes, if you use egg, you don't need as much milk. So you would reduce the amount of milk. You're still looking for this consistency though. And the reason we don't tend to use egg in this recipe is back in the war years, eggs were rationed. What have you got? Made scones before, but used egg milk mix, and it was sticky. So you just had blobs. Yeah, that was just because it was too wet. So we're going for something that is, I suppose, a bit like a bread dough or pastry. That's the kind of texture that you're going for. So, so yes, you can use eggs. It makes a richer pastry, a richer scone. But I say the British scone doesn't have them in there. And you can use egg as an egg wash when we get to the end of this. I will not be doing that because, again, it's just one less ingredient to have to worry about, and it just keeps the cost down. But if you want a really nice golden finish, then egg wash works well as well. Okay, are we all at this this stage so we can start looking at cutting these out? Is anybody not at this stage? I'm getting a thumbs up from Victoria. I think I've got people cleaning up in the sink over there, at Arlene's place. Okay, so like I say, I've just got a little bit of all-purpose flour. I was just thinking what you called it here then. A little bit of all-purpose flour. I'm just going to gently toss this across the work surface, and I'm going to use a rolling pin. You don't need to use a rolling pin. You could just flatten it with your hand, but a rolling pin does give it a sharper edge. So I'm just putting a little bit of flour on my surface, make sure I've got enough room to actually roll out. And I'm just going to flatten this and roll it a little bit. And this is how Grandma taught me. A quarter turn means that you keep a circle. Now in the States, you make your dough circular and then you put it into triangles. In the UK, we don't. We use a cookie cutter or a pastry cutter. I'm going to roll that out to, you know, a reasonable thickness. That's probably what, perhaps about ½ an inch. That might be a little bit thick. The thicker you leave the dough, the bigger and deeper the scone. However, you'll have less of them. So I'm just going to use some of my flour and just flour my cutter. And then the thing to remember with this, you want to go straight down. None of this twisting, because when you twist it, the scone doesn't go down straight and it will fall over when it's cooked. So it won't be even. So we're going to go straight down, and then we're just going to give it a little wiggle to the bottom. And then we're going to go straight down and wiggle to the bottom. And that's what I'm looking at, a nice thick scone. And of course this will raise a little bit in the oven as well. I think I can get a third one out of here, straight down, and then just cut the bottom. So that's 3. Like I say, you can get up to 6 from this, and you can always double the quantities if you need more. The beauty of doing a small batch is that they get eaten on the same day or the next morning or something like that. Now, I've noticed that in the US, you guys like your scones for breakfast. We'd never eat a scone for breakfast in England. It would always be for tea time, or for a dessert. So my husband will probably have one when he comes in tonight. Just straight down and take that one. And then I think I've got probably enough for 1 and a bit. I'm just pulling that dough back together again. If I use the rolling pin, it just flattens the top. And that is, and then I have this little bit at the end. This is your tester piece. That's going to go on. That's going to be your little, that's the baker's treat at the end. Okay, has everybody got their scones cut? Not yet, you're still working on it. You're still working on it though? Yeah, okay, getting some nods. I'm just going to clean up while you finish that. Now, your cutter doesn't need to be serrated like mine. It's just in the UK, that's how our cutters are. So, it's looking pretty good. And now I'm going to get my tray that I sprayed earlier. I'm just going to put these on here. And there's my little blob. And I'm going to put these in the oven, but I'm going to wait for you guys to catch up before I take you to the next stage. And again, just cleaning down as we go. Whew. So has anybody been to England? Have we had anybody visit the UK? Yes? No? Maybe? Okay. I keep asking you questions and you're still working. Okay, so Cheryl has, and Joyce has been twice and loved it. Yes, I must admit we were supposed to have gone back in May, but I'm hoping to go back in at Christmas if we're allowed in. The UK is going through a bit of more of a lockdown at the moment, which is unfortunate. So, have you got your tray and have you got your scones on there yet? How are we doing? Oh, you've been into the Cotswolds, lovely. And you're still working on the doughs. Okay, fantastic. Ooh, I'm getting a bit warm now. My oven's getting hot. Okay, I'm just going to have a glass of water. I'm waiting for this to catch up. So when I first came to the US, it was in 2008. It was actually the 1st of August. I remember it very well. It was a Thursday. And then on the Saturday, we went to the Indiana State Fair. And we really got to see what I think of as real America, especially with all the farming and all the just all the animals and all the, because I'm from a farming village. That's where I grew up, so I loved it. Then after I started up my business, I ended up making scones and doing scones demonstrations at the state fair, and I did that for 7 years. And this is the first time I've missed. Obviously, that hasn't gone ahead this year. So I've made quite a lot of scones in my lifetime, especially since I've had the business. So how are we doing, guys? Can I have some nods? Are we there yet? Yeah, some thumbs up. Victoria, fantastic. Arlene, how are you doing? Oh, she's coming over. Yeah. So have you got something that's looking like this yet? Yeah. You got them on the tray? So what we're going to do now you can decide what you want to do. If you want to add an egg, you can do an egg wash. I'm going to use some of the milk that I poured that I didn't use earlier. Or you could actually crack an egg into your milk and mix that up with a fork, and then that's an egg and milk wash. The egg gives a more golden colour, the milk not so much. I suppose it just depends how far you want to go with it. So if you haven't got one of these pastry brushes, you can just use your fingers and just go around the edge, the top of the scone. Or you can use one of these brushes and then just put a little bit of the milk over there. Now, when we did the milk, last time I did this, I think I did it with cream. You can do it with buttercream, you can do it with full fat milk, you can even use coconut milk. I'm using 2% milk just because that's what I had in the house. You can decide. The creamier the milk you use when you're actually mixing this into your recipe, the more tender the scones will be. Now, what I'm going to show you isn't necessarily an English way of doing this, but it's a nice touch if you want to do it. Now, in this little pot here, I've got some granulated sugar. In fact, it's raw cane sugar. I don't know if you can tell in this light, but it's slightly off-white, not quite brown, but it's quite a thick granulated. And I'm just going to put a little bit over the top of each of my scones. This will make it a bit more sweet, if you like sweet. You don't have to do this. This is just a nice way of getting a bit more of that golden colour coming through on your scones. I know some people have a bit more of a sweet tooth, and this can be really nice. I'll just put a little bit. So I'm just using my fingers and thumbs, and I'm just putting that amount, just a little pinch on each one. Okay, so I say that's an optional for you. And then we're going to pop this in the oven, and we say 15 to 20 minutes. Now, what I always do is I always put it in for 15 minutes and then add another 5, because what you don't want to happen is you have a particularly hot oven and then you put it in for the full 20 and it goes a little bit over. You can always add time, but you can't take it away. So I always start with slightly less and then add the next 5, and if it's still looking too pale, I might add another couple of minutes. So I'm going to pop these in for 15 minutes on my 375 oven at the top shelf, which I moved to the top earlier. So when you've all got your scones in the oven, just hop on and say done in the chat box, and I'll know where we're all at. In the meantime, I'm washing my hands again.
Yes, or Victoria and Sarah.
Yes, who's that?
A different one, so who's the mixer?
You have a question?
So that would be.
Arlene, did you have a question?
Yes, do I have a question?
Yes, did you have a question? No?
No, good.
We're all set there in the oven.
Yes, good.
You're all done? Okay, lovely. Let me just mute you again. Okay, because we don't want to have all your conversation. Victoria's done. And Donna's not doing it today. So it's just you guys then. Okay, cool beans. Okay. So what do we serve with our scones? Does anybody know? Just put something in the chat box if you know what we serve with our scones. How do you eat your scone? Jam and clotted cream. Well done, that gal. Yes. So does everybody get clotted cream or their double cream? I'm not sure which we had available. Have you all got this in your pack? Did you get that? Strawberry jam and cream with tea. Oh, lovely. Strawberry. Oh, excuse me. So did everybody get some cream within their pack? So Joyce is talking about a hunky Scottish laird. It's interesting you mentioned that, actually, because I was going to be doing a tour to Scotland back in May. Obviously it got postponed, but we were actually going to go to a place called Dunn's Castle and actually meet a laird. Yeah, I don't know if he was hunky, but I digress. Okay, so has everybody got their can you let me know if you got this with your packet? You did. I'm getting some nods. Lovely. Now, what I'm going to use, yeah, I reused the jar. What I'm going to use is homemade lemon curd on mine, just because that's what I've got, and lemon curd tastes pretty good with this as well. So obviously these are the ones I made earlier, and what I've done here is I've just sliced them, and I don't know if you can see. In fact, this one isn't sliced. Oh no, that one is. That one isn't sliced. Here we go. That one's not sliced yet, but a cutting line kind of appears on them halfway through when they are cooked. Now these have gone cold now, or cool now. So what we'll do, let me open this up. So what we would do is we put our clotted cream or double cream on here. You can't get hold of double cream or clotted cream. You can use heavy whipping cream. If you've had faux clotted cream, that might have some sweetness or some vanilla added to it, but that's not real clotted cream. The ones that we get are actually imported from England, and I've just been reading the label on this. So there's two types of cream. We've got double cream, which is in the blue, and then we have clotted cream in the green. We've been struggling to get the clotted cream, but double cream is exactly the same process. It just has slightly less buttercream in it. So it's not quite as yellow, but it's the same thing. It's just a different amount of buttercream in there. And for some reason, the double cream seems to be a bit easier to get hold of than the clotted cream at the moment, because anybody would think we're in the middle of a global pandemic. And it has actually impacted on what we can get hold of coming in from the UK. So the question then I have for you is it cream on first or jam on first? What do you prefer? Cream on first, okay. So let me tell you about this whole idea of which it should be. Now, if my husband was in the room, he would say, no, jam on first, cream on second. It really depends where you come from. So clotted cream has its origin in Devon and Cornwall. And if you've ever traveled to the UK, Devon and Cornwall are on the south coast. Cornwall is in the bottom left-hand corner. It's like the toe of England. Land's End is there, so it's right at the very end of the country. The next county along is Devon. And in Devonshire, they have something called the Devonshire cream tea. And in Cornwall, they have the Cornish cream tea. And basically, what we talk about when we're talking about this idea of a cream tea, it's basically scones, clotted cream and jam with a cup of tea or a pot of tea that goes with it. In Devonshire, they put the cream on first. They use it like butter. Now, if you have got your jar, you might want to check. Now, this might separate a little bit, but it's okay. It's just how you just have to kind of mix it back again. And I'm just finding I'm having to do that a little bit with this one. I've had it out on the counter for a little while. So in Devon, they put the cream on first. So they kind of treat it like butter with the on the bottom. And then they take the jam, and you might have strawberry or raspberry or lemon curd like I have here. I'm actually looking forward to this because I made this and I haven't actually eaten it yet. So. And then you put a dollop of jam. So I suppose it depends if you prefer the cream or the jam, which way you do it. But in Devon, they serve it like that. But in Cornwall, they do it the opposite way round, just to be different, I think. So they put their jam on first, and they just put a little bit of jam on, perhaps a little bit more than that. So they put their jam on first, and then they take a big dollop of clotted cream, and then they dollop the cream on top, like that. So this is the Cornish way, and this is the Devonshire way. Now they both pertain to have the best scones and clotted cream in the country. I'll let you decide which way you want to do it. But I always jokingly say that's why we cut them in half, so you can do it each way, and then you can decide. But one of the things you never do is put them back together again, because all that gooiness will just go everywhere. I don't know which one to take a bite of. I think I'm going to try this one and save this one for David when he comes back in, because that's the way he likes it. Oh my God. Okay. That is really good. The lemon curd is really good. The perfect scone should be, excuse me. A perfect scone should be crispy on the outside and really what we call tender in the center. Not too dry, although we should never eat a scone without at least butter or jam on there. They're not designed to eat dry. I know a lot of people have a bad idea about scones and they say they're far too dry, but they shouldn't be, especially when they're served like this. When I first started Tina's Traditional back in 2011, I was making scones and I was selling them at farmers markets. And I wasn't allowed to sell the cream because I wasn't making it myself. So people would buy packs of 4 scones and they'd walk off with them in the morning and they'd eat them for breakfast. We mentioned that we don't do that in the UK, but they'd walk off and they'd start eating them dry. And I remember thinking, no, don't do that, please. You know, when you get home, put some cream, jam, whatever you've got on those, because that's how they should be done. And that was the reason I wanted to open a tea room, because I wanted to be able to serve scones properly the English way, so that you could really appreciate what a scone should be like. So I always say that Tina's Traditional was built on scones, and that we had pretty crummy business because they crumble because they're just so tender. So that's my little story about scones. Let's see what time we've got. Okay, I'm probably about 5 minutes away at the moment. How long have you guys got? We put them on for 15 minutes, I think, to start off with. If you could let me know in the chat box how long you've got left, that would be helpful. And of course, when you eat these fresh from the oven, they are amazing. Now, if you don't eat them all tonight, you can freeze these and you can warm them in the oven. That's just like they've come out of the oven. 5 minutes left. Great. Yeah, me too. 2 for you, Victoria. Okay, that's it. So these do freeze really, really well. And you can either just let them come up to room temperature, or you can put them in an oven at 350 for maybe 10 or 15 minutes just to warm through. Or I suppose you could put them in the microwave. I tend not to. I like to keep that crispy outer coat and soft fluffy inside. So you don't have to eat them all today. And I think some of these are going to go in the freezer. Otherwise, we're going to end up eating them all, and it probably isn't a good idea this late at night. Okay. So has anyone got any questions for me? It doesn't have to be about necessarily this recipe. Share a story with me. If you want to unmute yourself, do so, and we'll have a little natter. Has anybody got any tea going? I know I haven't got tea earlier. What have I done with it? So I've got my little teapot here. I actually did a green jasmine tea today, which is rather nice. Has anybody got tea at the moment? Let me find a little teapot. You may recognise this as the Tina's Traditional teacup. It's the one that we have on our website. And this is actually a Royal Albert pattern. I got this on my very first tour back in 2014. And it's called Cheeky Pink. It's got little polka dots. I don't know if you can see that, little polka dots and roses. And then it's repeated on the cup and then also inside the cup as well. So I've got some jasmine green going on here. You can't really eat a scone without tea. Do you serve warm or room temperature? I'm assuming you're talking about the scones there, Donna. They're nice served warm. I mean, they're okay at room temperature, but they are really good warm. Where in England am I from? Okay, so I am from a place called Derbyshire. It's about 100 miles north of London, right in the centre of the country. I was born in the town of Derby. It's, you would call it Derby, because it is spelled D-E-R-B-Y, but we say Derby. Don't know why, it's just how it's said. And I was raised in a small village. in the countryside by my mum, my gran, and my great-gran. Now, my great-gran was born in 1899, and she was a scullery maid back at the time of Downton Abbey, I suppose. Anybody a fan of Downton? I don't know if you've watched the show. It's been off the air for a few years, and there was a film. Was it last year the film came out? I think it was. And it was my great-grandmother that actually showed me how to slice and unslice loaf and how to butter bread, which I thought everybody knew how to do until I came here to the States and realized I actually had to teach my team how to do that, which I will actually be doing on next week's class, in fact, because next week I'm going to be doing a little class about the English tea sandwich, and we're going to be making some of the fillings and making little tea sandwiches, and I'll be showing you my great-grandmother's technique for buttering bread. So if you're interested in that, just let me know. So yeah, so Derbyshire in the middle of the UK, very rural upbringing, 200 houses in the entire village, and the church there was built in Saxon times, and Bradley was the name of the village, and that was actually listed in the Domesday Book of 1066. So it's been around a long, long time. So that's where I'm from. Okay, how are we doing on the scones? I'm going to go for another couple of minutes online. How are you guys doing? A couple of more minutes left, perhaps? So we're going for this nice golden brown colour. Let me just move that one out. So this is a good colour for a scone. You can see how it's got like a little, it's not ultra brown, but it has got some colour.
What does it look like on the bottom? Is it
Yes,
more?
the bottom, I don't know if you can see that. That has got, so it's kind of a light brown colour on the bottom, and it will be crispy. Soft. Crispy, not soft.
Oh, yeah.
If you want to show me what you have there, then please feel free to adjust your screen so we can see. Oh, nice. Nice shape. Oh, we made a lot. Was that 2 packets?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
we used a smaller, we only had a tiny cookie cutter.
Okay, well, you made more. That's fine. That's fine. I think they need a little bit longer.
You do?
Oh, look at them.
Yeah, the bottoms. Yeah, but it's not the bottoms that we're going to really see. I think they'll be okay to go in for another minute or 2. We're just looking for that colour on the top. I think you'll be all right to put those in for another couple of minutes.
Okay.
And that's what we usually do. So we do the 15 minutes, and then we'll add maybe 5 minutes or then 2 minutes, long enough for it to do something, but not too long for it to burn. So my pussycat's outside. We have outdoor cats. We have 2. One's called Cookie and one's called Captain. And Captain's outside at the moment. And he's doing this on the door, trying to get in. So if I start giggling, it's because he's making me smile. But I won't let him in until we're finished. So you're asking about where I'm from in England. My son and my daughter, I have, gosh, I feel so old when I say this out loud. I have a 30-year-old and I have a 28-year-old. My son's the older, and they still live in the UK. And of course, we've not been able to travel back at all this year. And we're hoping to get out at Christmas if we're allowed to travel. At the moment, we'd have to go into a 14-day quarantine. So that's kind of putting us off a little bit at the moment. But if we can get out at Christmas and over to the New Year, that would be excellent. So have you all been to the tea room? Did you all manage to get in before we close, or have you come across us since then? Anybody been at the tea room? No? Okay. He's so making me laugh. He's doing this now, trying to open the door, I think. Okay. Any other questions for anyone at the moment? Do you want to show me where your scones are at, if you've got them? I think I'm just going to have to adjust the cat. Just bear with me. Okay, sorry about that. I am back. He's gone into his bed, so he's out of the way. Oh, you went to a Harry Potter event a while ago, Victoria. That's lovely. Can I show you the cat? He's not a cat that likes being picked up, so I'm not. Actually, let me see if I can just turn the screen around. There he is. Look. He's a long-haired ginger with lots of white. And he has and I don't know where the other one is. He's lying off his bed. Let me see if I can.
We're wondering if these look good.
If you what? Sorry. Sorry. I'm back. Sorry. What was that?
We're wondering if these look good.
Oh, they do. Yes. Yeah. Very nice.
Thank you.
And are they nice and brown on the bottom? You've got a little bit of colour on the bottom. It's always a good test. Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. So when you come to cut them, bear with me. So when you come to cut them, don't use a, let me show you. So this kind of knife we call a chef's knife, and it has a straight, sharp blade on it. We don't want to use this kind of blade. What we want to do is use a serrated edge. Now, this is a very old knife, actually. I had this, gosh, I think I had this when I was married. I've been married for 30 years. So this is like my trusted bread knife. A little bit at the end's broken. But this is a serrated fine edge here, and a slightly wider toothed serrated edge here. I use the fine serrated edge for cutting scones, because if you use something that's too thick, it will crumble. But you want enough to be able, now this one here I haven't cut yet, but can you see how it's got that line across it? And that's where you would slice it. And what I do is I hold it quite firm in my hand. Now let them go cold first, or at least cool, otherwise you're going to burn yourself doing this. But what we would do is just come down, and I'm sawing it, and it gives a very clean cut. So when you open it, it has that really nice clean cut. If you use the wrong kind of knife, the whole scone can disintegrate. So that's why I'm mentioning that. So when you come to slice them a little bit later, make sure if you have got one of these, a fine serrated edge is better. The thicker serrated edge will tear, and I don't think this one is going to be much better. Let me see. Oh, that's not just cut. I needed a bigger plate for these, really. I should have brought more plates out. Yeah, you see, as I'm pressing into this, because it's not got the teeth in it. I can't see what I'm doing. Because this hasn't got the teeth in it, it's starting to crumble. So I'm not going to use that type of knife. Again, this is all my kind of top tips for making scones, because I've had some disasters, I must admit. So we all have learned by trial and error, but don't use that sort of knife. Use a bread knife. Right. Okay, how is everybody doing? Have we got our scones out of the oven yet? Are we all done? And what kind of tea did you get in your pack? Was it English breakfast or something else? Let me see where mine are at. Oh, yes. Let me turn this on. Now, if you have one of these, this is a baking rack. That's what I'm going to put mine on to help them cool down. They are very hot, obviously, so just come out the oven. So that's what mine are looking like. Just going to use a little bit of kitchen towel so I can pick this up to show you, because these are quite hot still. So these are the ones that I've just taken out of the oven, and the bottoms are looking nice. You see that? And these are quite tall. Yeah. And they've got a nice clean edge because I went straight down with my cutter, and then they've got a nice straight top because I used the rolling pin. So they're nice and uniform in shape. I say if you have them and they start to spread out, it's because they're too wet. If they have cracks on them, it was because it was a little bit too dry. Oh, yours are still a bit doughy. Okay, that might be because your oven's not hot enough. Are you at the top of the oven, Victoria? Have you got your shelf up high enough? That's another reason why they can be a bit pale.
Yeah, it's at 375, and the shelf looks about mid-rack though.
Yeah, I would probably put it up another a bit higher, maybe not to the very top, but maybe the second. I suppose every oven's different. I've got maybe 4 different levels mine can be on. It's not the middle one, it's the one above the middle.
Okay, thanks.
That might be why. Now your scones might be a little bit, well, you say they're doughy at the moment. Interesting, okay. If anything, they may dry out if you keep them in longer, but you do need to get this colour, otherwise they won't be cooked properly. You might need to put them in for another 5 at that rack level, or move the rack, but please be careful because obviously now your rack is hot.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what tea have you got there, Victoria? What have you got? What are you drinking?
The English Fruit Garden.
Oh gosh, I love that one. That is, do you know the story behind the English Fruit Garden? Yeah, would you like me to tell you?
Yeah, of course.
So, as I mentioned, I was raised by my mum, my gran, and my great gran, and the reason there was 4 generations, we had 2 cottages next to each other when I grew up, and there was a huge garden. And when I say garden, I'm meaning, you know, fruit trees and strawberries and gooseberries and all these beautiful fruits. And when I went back a couple of years ago, I was in the garden, and I saw this ray of sunshine coming through the apple tree. It was a kind of a dappley sunshine coming through the apple tree. And it just kind of occurred to me that wouldn't it be nice to do a tea blend based on Mum's fruit garden back home in England. So I came back with the idea of doing a blend, and the blend I chose, or the base tea I chose, was the rooibos, the red rooibos. And then we added all the fruits that I remember picking as a young girl, because my grandmother would be the one who would make all the jams and the preserves. My mum would make all the pies because she was great at pastry. And that's how the English Fruit Garden came into being. Can you just show me the packet, or just put the packet up for me again? And let me see, can you just unmute yourself for a second so everybody else can see, so that you're like center?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you see that picture is of blackberries. I don't know if you can see at the side of it, there's a little, in very small writing at the side of the picture. It says a year. Can you read the year for me, or the date? It's in very faint.
Oh.
Yeah?
Wait.
Yeah.
That's 1161. Oh, wait.
116.
1161.
Okay.
That sounds right.
Turn it the other way around. What does it say?
Oh my gosh. 1911. Yeah. That would have been correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
1911.
So this is the story behind this picture. This picture was a picture that my great grandfather drew in 1911 when he was 12 years old.
Wow.
Wow.
And that's why I wanted to put it on my tea. So that's my family tea that I created when like I say, it's probably 4 years ago now. So one of the things that I've inherited from, I call it my family's legacy collection. And one of the things that I've inherited is a sketchbook that my great grandfather, in fact, there's a series of them from when he was 8 to the age to when he was 12. And obviously, the ones that he did when he was 12 are much better than the ones that he did when he was 8. But it's part of something that I call the legacy collection. And we're actually going to be running a legacy collection evening and kind of like a mini tea party here at my house in a couple of weeks' time. So if you're interested in history and want to see some of these artifacts, pictures, and drawings that my great grandfather did, then that's something you might want to come and have a look at. So we've only got a few people coming, so it'll be all nicely social distanced and masks will be required. But anyway, I just wanted to mention that. But that is why that tea is such a special tea, because it's got a lot of family in there. Okay, so how are we doing on our scones? Have we all finished? I see a couple of folks have left now that weren't actually baking, but that's fine. These have cooled down enough for me to slice, but I'm probably going to pop those in the freezer. What I would suggest you do if you do freeze these, I would actually slice them first before you put them in the freezer, because then they'll be ready to go. They're lovely and delicate in the center. So I'm just going to slice mine. And then do you want to start serving one up and trying it? This is the tester piece, which I mentioned. We always have that little bit at the end if we want to have a munch on that. My husband took the one that I did earlier today. So we had that before he left. It always disappears for an hour or so when I do these classes. So they can be a little bit crummy, these. I think they're probably better cooked when they're completely cold. But again, nice clean cut using the right knife. Okay, so these were my blueberry, dried blueberry. I thought that was what we were using on this one, wasn't it? Sorry, black currant. Very similar. I always used to like picking off the slightly warm fruits. I like my dried fruit. We have so much dried fruit in the UK. So have we enjoyed that? Yeah, let's unmute everybody one at a time for those of you that are left. So Arlene, you're unmuted. How was that for you? Have you learned something new today?
Yes.
What sort of things were new for you? What did you learn today?
Oh my goodness.
just, it was just fun.
It was just fun. Good, good.
It was just fun.
What have you got there? What jam have you got? Is it honey?
It's the champagne elder.
Oh, the champagne elderflower. Now, the
It
story
is-
behind that jam was that we were making, this was a special jam that we made for Harry and Meghan's wedding, because her wedding cake was elderflower and lemon.
Really?
And we thought elderflower and champagne, well, that's a celebration. So that's how that particular jam.
Good. It's very good.
It's
It is.
delicious.
Yes, yes,
I mean, it's just, it's
Yes.
delicious.
yes.
It's
We're
really
enjoying ourselves here eating.
Yes. It's so funny, you know, because when I told my husband what I was planning on doing as far as, you know, closing down the tea room, which is really kind of sad and all that, but this idea of going online with the bake classes and basically saying, you know, are you okay me doing this every week? And, you know, I'm doing this in an open kitchen, you know, the TV is over there somewhere. So we couldn't obviously have him at home watching TV like he would normally do. So he has to kind of like go off and do stuff. And so, are you sure you're all right me doing this? And he said, Tina, I could really get the hang of this, because obviously all this food will get consumed in the next week. So he's very, very happy about this new move. Okay, so that was Arlene. Joyce,
Yes,
how are you doing there, sweetheart? Did you learn anything today?
yes. I've always never knew how the breadcrumbs, you know, to make it be like breadcrumbs.
Yeah,
So I've not been successful, but this was very informative
yeah.
and very much so. And I've had wonderful scones in many places. I had a fabulous scone in Scotland once.
Oh, yeah.
And yes, and so I really wanted to learn to make them well. And this was very, very helpful. Thank you.
Good, good. I must admit, when you do it by hand, and grandmother did teach me to do this by hand originally, you get to feel the dough in a way that a machine doesn't really allow you to do that. So if you do get stuck, I would go back to doing it, as I call it, the old-fashioned way. But you don't want to kind of push it and squeeze it. It's just this very, very delicate
Thin,
kind
yes.
of thing. And so it's a very light breadcrumb. If you go too far, it starts to clump back together again, and then you've gone over. So hopefully that helps. Okay. Joyce, are you still there? Oh, no, sorry, Arlene, Joyce. Victoria, there we go. That's what I was wanting to get to. Can you unmute yourself, Victoria? Tell me how you've been getting on.
I liked learning about the it was like the Cornish style, and then I forget the other place.
Devonshire and Cornwall, yes. The Devonshire cream tea or the Cornish cream tea.
Yeah, I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
And then I really liked hearing the history about the tea, because that just makes it better.
Yeah, it does. It makes it taste more if there's more of a story behind it and how it kind of came into being. So I'm glad you enjoyed that.
We got this one. The hazelnut almond smells amazing.
Oh yes, that's a new one actually. I think we added that at Christmas.
Oh.
And it's insane. When you open the packet or the container, it just kind of wafts in, and it's like, oh my gosh, and you just want to have like a big cup of it. So yeah, that's a good one. They're all good, really. They're all hand selected. A lot of them are our own blends. We don't blend our own tea. We actually work with the tea merchants, because he's a master blender, so his flavor profile is fantastic. But I come up with the ideas and the concepts for the recipes.
Wow.
We've been working together now for, gosh, 7 years, is it? Yeah. So yeah. And the fact that we can now do the Tina's traditional range of teas online, we're getting to a much wider audience than we ever could have done just by having a little tea room. So,
Tina, can you go over the baking powder again? I missed the aluminum.
Yeah. So this is one of the brands that I always look out for in the supermarket. It's Argo. And what you're looking for is, it actually says on the canister, aluminum free. That's what you're looking for. If it doesn't say aluminum free, it has aluminum in it.
Okay.
But this gives you a better flavor, not just in scones, but any kind of baking. So if you ever get that kind of metallic aftertaste when you've had a cake or scones, kind of coats the top of your roof of your mouth, this is what you need to do instead. I remember going to a tea room in, gosh, where was it? It was somewhere in the States. And great scone, but then the aftertaste kicked in. It's like, oh, that's such a shame. And it's like, I just need to go and tell her to stop using that kind of baking powder. But yeah, so it's one of the first things I learned.
And if we do it by hand, would you recommend a pastry blender tool?
No, you know, I've never used one. I've never ever used one. I know here in the States we seem to have gadgets for everything. You know what my grandma told me to use? Let me show you. You'll laugh at this. Let me see if I can find one. A long pronged fork. That's all you need. So when you are mixing your butter in with your flour, and then once the big pieces are cut, I always chop up my butter now, even when I use the machine, I always chop it up into little squares because it gives a bigger surface area, rather than just having this big glob of butter in your mix. So slice it up, use this just to basically get all the flour coated on the butter, and then you use these things and you just go in very lightly and you do this kind of movement, but it's really like, it's like fingertips only, and it takes a little bit of time, but I always believe that when you make it by hand, you build in more love, and the taste is so much better. The texture is better, everything is so much better if you have the time to do it that way. And I have, as part of this legacy collection that I mentioned, there's a little cookbook from a brand name called Biro, which is a flour brand. And every year Biro put out a new cookery book. And the one that I came across was the one that my grandma learnt from. It dates back to the 1930s, and in the front of it, there's a little phrase there that says, "Mothers, teach your daughters how to make scones for daddy's tea, and you'll teach them skills that they'll use when they become housewives themselves." Something along those lines. I thought, oh, how charming and how quaint that was, that scones are the first thing that little girls should be making at Disney. So anyway, folks, I hope you've enjoyed. If you can take some photographs, I'd really appreciate it. Oh, what was the name of the cookbook? It's called Biro. What I'll do on the website, not on the website, on the Facebook page, I'll do a little mention of this particular book. In fact, just bear with me a second. I don't have the old one because that's kept down in the basement, but this is the 41st edition. So I've not got all of them. Or on the back there, I don't know if you can see that. You just, yeah, do you see that at the back there? Ooh. This here is the original book. Now I've got a copy of that in my basement collection, in my legacy collection. But Biro is the name of a brand in the UK, and my mum would always buy this every year. It was the same recipes, but she'd buy one every year just because it was like a tradition. So I've got several of these. Yeah, so that's how my grandmother learned, and she taught me how to do this. So that's what we've shared today. So have we all enjoyed this? Has this been a bit of fun, a bit of silliness, a little bit of learning in a way that we perhaps don't do anymore? And hopefully you've had something nice. I do have a cookbook called Tina's Traditional Book of Scones, which has 15 recipes. I would like you to take pictures if you don't mind, and if you could do them at high resolution on your phone and upload them to our Facebook page, that would be really, really helpful. Or you can send them to me via email, and I think you've all had an email from me today, so just email me back through there some of your pictures, because I'm doing a new version of the cookbook. It's going to be the Memories edition of Tina's Traditional Book of Scones, and I'm looking for some lovely photographs that we can use. And that book is going to be released I believe in November, in time for the holidays. So you might get your picture into Cookery Book. So let me have that. That would be absolutely lovely. And like I say, if you want to sign up to any of the up and coming events that we have, the next one next week is all about tea sandwiches. We'll be putting tea sandwiches together and all those lovely fillings like the coronation chicken salad. And then the following week, we're doing the legacy event, which will be a live event rather than a virtual one. And then next month, I'm doing lemon Madeira cake, which is like a lemon drizzle. So if you like all things lemon, you might want to hop onto that one. Okay, my sweethearts, I'm going to have to go because I think I need to make sure my husband's not walking the streets. And if anyone's got any questions, if anyone wants a copy of the recording, I'm happy to email the link through to you. Like I say, it's just for us. It's not for the general public's consumption. But if you would like a copy of that, I can get that over to you sometime later tomorrow. Have a lovely evening. Enjoy your scones, and until next time.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. No, very good. Very, very good. Bye, folks. Bye-bye.